right, I realized that I didn't check my mic until this started, but it looks like it's working. So welcome everybody to the second live stream today to sort of hang out and do a Q&A session and some demos of the new Tiga keyboard. I did one of these earlier today at 2 o'clock. That's on the YouTubes if you want to watch that one. This one's a little bit different. I put different modules in than I had in there before, and I thought I would approach it in a little bit different way than I did last time. The last stream, I had a clouds in here, and I had the MFX reverb in here, which I don't think I even ended up using, but I did definitely have the clouds in there, and I was definitely using that. This one I decided to go for something different. So I have our local parks oscillator. This is the latest oscillator that we have available in our sort of limited edition set, and then I have the Toad, which is our phase shifter. It's another limited module. These are in here to sort of illustrate some different points than I did the last time around, but before I get ahead of myself here, welcome everybody, and thank you for hanging out with me this evening. I'm excited to be here hanging with you. If you have any questions, please at me in the chat, and if you see me looking over here, this is where I look to see the chat, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have. There was some great questions in the first live stream earlier today. Happy to answer the same questions over and over again. It's fine. I'll talk about any aspect of this or the differences between this and the original Tiga, although I'm going to try to cover that on my own. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them as we go. Hello, Max. Thanks for tuning in. Hello to everybody else for tuning in. It's nice to see the crew in the chat. If you're not a regular here to the live streams that I do and you want to talk and interact, please jump into the chat. I'm happy to talk with you and the rest of the chat that are all friendly folks. They'll be happy to chat with you too. So I figured I would start by talking about what makes Tiga keyboard different from a Tiga desktop. Well, the first thing is we have a 37 key keyboard. Now this is a new keyboard that we developed, and I wanted something. I'm going to turn that down. There we go. I wanted something that felt sort of classic synth, and this definitely gives me sort of Juno 106 vibes. It's definitely a synth keyboard and not a piano keyboard, which is fine for me because I play with 2 fingers most of the time. So it's not a problem for me. I certainly enjoy it. We got a lot of feedback from Bus Crates on this. He's our sort of in-house keyboard player, and his ideas on how it should work and everything, all that was taken into account, along with some feedback from some others, and I think we came up with something really, really nice keyboard. So 37 key keyboard, we have pitch and mod wheels here. The mod wheel is tied to the multifunction tool. Now this is in Tiga Desktop, but it's a little bit hidden. You have to have a MIDI keyboard to access it in Tiga Desktop, where in this one, you have full access to it right here. So the mod wheel, you can switch between 0 to 5 volts. We have a triangle wave LFO. We have an envelope, and we have a random. So you can use those to decide what the output of the mod wheel with the output of the multifunction is going to be, and that is then available as a jack, and it's also normal to the frequency CV1 of the filter. I also have, currently I have it patched into the shape CV of Oscillator 3 using this red cable right here. Chat asks, how much power is available for the modules? I know there's 3 headers. That's this section right here, and I will get to the section in general. I'm not sure exactly how much power we have available. The power is built off of the same power supply that we have the Tiga synth engine on. I've had quite a few modules in there. I've had clouds, other digital modules. I've also had a ton of analog modules. I haven't had any problems powering anything. I don't have any hard numbers for you. It's kind of tough to say based on, a lot of digital modules need sort of a startup burst of energy. So the numbers don't always necessarily mean as much as you want them to, but I haven't had any problems powering anything in it. As long as you're not putting a ribbon cable chain in there and trying to power 12 2 HP modules, you should be fine. If you stick to 3 headers and 3 modules, you shouldn't have any problems at all. Okay, back to, the keyboard. We have our pitch bend, and you can set the range on that. And you also have, this is where your octave up and octave down buttons are. And that's pretty straightforward. So that's a big change. The next big change, obviously, is the Eurorack expansion bay. Now, the idea behind this is it's not a Eurorack case enclosed within Tiga. It's really meant to be an expansion bay. So you have 24 HP, you have 3 headers, and it's meant to allow you to augment the Tiga voice with something that you feel you would like to have for the music that you're trying to create. Or it's that if it only did this one other thing, this allows you to do that. So for instance, right now I have a 4th oscillator, the local parks, and I have the Toad phase shifter. I have the Toad patched in so that it's coming out of the echoes in the signal path and going back into the preamp where I'm overdriving the phase shifter, and then it's mixing through again. So it gets some really interesting feedback sounds. And you have to be careful with the regen or it'll just lose its mind. But it adds this huge depth to the sound without sounding overly phase shifty, if that makes any sense, which I kind of like. And then, of course, having 4 oscillators just gives it a ridiculous sound. So if I turn down the phase shifter and I turn down, so these guys aren't in the signal path anymore. This is the 3 oscillators that we have in here. And they're all set to sort of different waveforms at this point. But I do have duophonics set up at this point right now as well, which I can go ahead and turn that off and then go down to a monophonic patch, maybe an arpeggiator. Some weird folded triangle waves here. Let's go to a VCA mode on the dynamics. We can even turn our delay off. Let me know if that's better, hopefully. I think that sounds pretty weird. But anyway, before I get ahead of myself. So in the first live stream, like I said, I had a clouds in here, and I had this clouds here, and this ALM MFX, which has a really great reverb, like I said. And I was playing with the clouds, and it was nice to have the stereo field that you get from the clouds. Now, assuming that people would want to put stereo effects in here, we do have stereo outs on Tiga keyboard, which is another difference between the Tiga desktop and this one, is that there is a left, right, and a left output and a right output. So, for instance, if we rewired our phase shifter here to come out of the echoes, and then we take stage 7 out of the phase shifter into the left, and we take stage 12 out of the phase shifter into the right, now we should have a stereo sound. So let's just go down to one oscillator here and see if we can hear that stereo. Yeah. So you can hear the stereo effects that you're getting from the phase shifter. So it's nice to have the left and the right outputs, even though Taiga, the synth voice itself, is monophonic. Having a stereo output is very nice. Now, it could be stereo out. You could use it as dual mono out if you wanted to. Depending on what you have in here, you could have 2 audio signal paths in here. Absolutely. If you throw in, say, another VCA and another filter, you could absolutely have 2 complete audio signal paths in here, in which case you could have an output for each one. That's totally reasonable and something you could definitely do. Well, you need to calibrate this like the desktop version. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by calibrate it. You will have to calibrate the duophonic side of it. That is a true thing. But it takes a second or two to do. You can do it all right here. But the oscillators and everything else should come fully calibrated. And the delay should come calibrated. All that fun stuff. Another difference between Tiga keyboard and Tiga desktop is, as you can see, there is a coarse and a fine-tune knob for each oscillator. Now on Tiga desktop, due to space constraints, we found a way to use one tuning knob for both coarse and fine-tune, depending on whether you had MIDI enabled or not. On this one, regardless of what the state of whether it's MIDI enabled or not, you always have the full range of the oscillator available to you, and the fine and coarse tune knobs to dial in exactly what you want each oscillator to be. So that just makes it a little bit easier and a little bit more flexible. You could simulate this in Tiga desktop by turning MIDI off, then you have the full range oscillator, and using the pitch output, the 1 volt per octave output of the converter into the pitch input on the oscillator. So that's sort of a workaround from there. But this one, you don't need to do that because it's sort of built in. So if we turn off now, if we pull out our phase shifter, oh, that's pretty out of tune. So let's solve that real fast. So this oscillator 1 is okay. There we go. Now, one thing I will say, and if you watch the first live stream, you'll know this. Like, I have no idea how to play the keyboard. It's not what I do. I have friends that can play the keyboard. None of them are here, so you have to deal with me. It's sort of ridiculous that I'm demoing a keyboard version of a synth when I literally play with one finger at a time, but I'm the guy that's here, so... I'll be the one demoing it. So I have the... Even though I turned off the duophonic, I left the patch cable in, which is giving me the pitch changes based on the velocity. So if I unplug that, that's why our oscillator was way out of tune. There we go. Oscillator 3 is the same way. Let's tune this one up. There we go. Boy, that sounds huge. Not sure if this needs a fourth oscillator. I did last night as I was sort of sitting here jamming after I'd set everything up and wanted to make sure everything was working. I did at one point have 5 oscillators in here, and that was more. It was so overkill. It was a little absurd, but something you could absolutely do. Say you use this, you mult the 1 volt per octave and go into the 2 oscillators. This one goes into channel 4. It's overriding the noise inputs. And then the 5th oscillator, you would just put that into the preamp. And then you have, 5 oscillators. Let's stick this back. Well, you know what? Maybe we'll go back into the output here. Play with the stereo phase shifter. Some additional changes between the Tiga desktop and the Tiga keyboard. We had a lot of feedback from people that thought the ADSRs on the Tiga desktop were a little bit, there wasn't enough resolution in the first, say, third of the knob, which I didn't necessarily feel that way. That's the same ADSRs that we've used with the same setup now for, the SV1, the East Beast, all the microvolt. They all had the same setup, but feedback is feedback. So we went through and we changed the orientation of the knobs, or we changed the knobs so that you have a lot more resolution in the first half of the knob than you did before. Overall, you have the same amount of resolution. We've just sort of shifted around where it's focused. And that gives someone that wants to tweak the sound at the beginning, makes it a little bit easier to do for them. Not a huge change, but certainly something people would ask for, and so we made sure that we put it in. Let's turn off this fourth oscillator so you can hear just Taiga. And for that, we'll even take out the phase shifter. Maybe we... I watched a video of the Unperson giving a demo on the Unperson YouTube channel earlier today, and I was almost embarrassed as I was watching it. He was so good at giving demos and playing, but it's not a skill that I have. So we've been in VCA mode this whole time. Let's switch now to low pass gate mode. Tighten it up here a bit. One of the cool things about analog envelopes, and I don't talk about this very often, but I find it fascinating and I really enjoy it, is with the envelopes, because of the way the ADSR works, if you press the note, you get something relatively short because your decay is very low, your sustain is off, and then you have a little bit of release. But by the time you get... if you press and hold it, by the time you get to the release, there's not really that much left. So, but if you just sort of flick the key, you haven't engaged much of the release or the decay, and so you get a lot more release. And of course, Tiga Desktop works the same way, and it's just sort of one of those quirks about analog ADSRs that I really enjoy. So again, if you have any questions for me, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep noodling around here. Let's hang out and play with the oscillators for a little bit. So let's go. What I'll do is turn to oscillator 1 here, and we're just going to open up the dynamics. So it's sort of a drone synth at this point because this is your pass-through knob. And what that allows us to do is just sort of let it drone, and then we can open up the filter as well. And we can just listen to the oscillators. Now what we're listening to is the saw wave. And as you can hear, we're using the wave folder to shape that saw wave. And as you can see on the scope down here, as I run through the wave folder, we get to a point where it turns almost into a sine wave. It's sort of a saw, maybe a rounded off saw, but it kind of loses the majority of its harmonics. Now you can still hear a little bit of a hook there, a little bit of a buzz, but compared to here, you know, it's mostly gone. So that would be, in my mind, that's sort of like a dead spot. And as we roll through it, and as you can see, as it keeps folding it, we're going to keep sort of going, there's another one here, we're going to keep going in and out of those dead spots. Now, you could make an argument that that's a musical sound, and I would tend to agree that it is musical, and there's definitely uses for it. But this is where the warp circuit comes in. So if we hit this seed button one more time, now we're still in the saw wave, but we've engaged the warp circuit. So what we've done is you can see the saw wave, although it sounds the same, it looks wildly different. But as we now push through the wave folder, you'll see that there's no dead spots anymore. So you have nice and smooth the whole way through. This works best with the high harmonic waves like the saw. For example, if we do it with sine wave, now here's a sine wave. Now we can fold the sine wave. This is without the warp. And because of the shape of the sine, it sounds great. There's no dead spots on its own. But we can put in the warp circuit here, and you can see it really doesn't change the shape of the oscillator very much, because it really affects higher harmonic waveforms more than lower ones. But we can still go through, and it's almost like a wavetable, because it does have a little bit more of an aggressive sound to it now. And we could try the same thing with the triangle. This is without it. And this is the warped version. You can see this is almost siney with a couple little lumps in there. And again, this one has some really nice high harmonics in it that work really well with the filter. And of course, one of my favorite demos with Tiga is the sort of chunky motorcycle sound, which is always very nice. And that's just the saw wave through the warp, modulating the wave folder, and then we're also modulating the filter cutoff a little bit. Because we're in low-pass gate mode over here, we can add additional resonance to beef up the sound a little bit. Now, the resonance in the low-pass gate works very differently than it does in the filter. Over here, it's really meant to just beef up the sound and sort of add depth to the sound. It's not going to give you that full resonant, wet drip sound like we are getting right now. Again, that was all with the dynamics, just sort of wide open, kind of droning along. like how that sounds. All right, so I think those are the big differences and some of the characteristics of the Tiga keyboard compared to the Tiga desktop. As far as the voicing goes, the synth voice is basically the same synth voice. We added a second analog LFO, which gives it just a little bit more modulation. So what this is normal to, as far as modulation goes, is a little bit different. All that's written under each of the CV knobs. The knobs on Tiga keyboard they're all one size up. So there's no, you can see over here on the local parks, these are the small knobs. This is the knob size that most of Tiga desktop is made of. But everything is sort of up one size. So we don't actually have any of the smaller knobs on Tiga keyboard. Everything is the medium or the large knobs. And that's just because we had the space, because of the physical size of the instrument, to add those nice chunky knobs. And they feel really nice too. The pots are really, really nice feel to them. Just has such a nice sound to it. Oh, I love it. And again, this is just all Tiga keyboard at the moment. We're not using any of the modules over here. The phase shifter is not plugged in, and the fourth oscillator isn't turned out. This is the fourth oscillator added. But we'll leave that out for the moment. Yes, you're right about the echo section. It's really meant, it's echoes. It's analog BBD delays, so you get very nice chorusy to slapback kind of effects. You can get some nice repeats. And you can get some little bit longer echoes, but you run into, at that point, some clock noise, and that's kind of natural with this. And if I patch this into the multi output, we'll switch to the 0 to 5 volts. We'll turn the arpeggiator off here. You can get a little bit more out of it, but not too much. And what I'm trying to do is use the 5 volts to sum with the time and get additional time out of it. But you don't really get that much additional time. It's sort of what you hear is what you get. But it does have a very nice lo-fi delay time effect to it, but does really excel in this range here, using the time. We can just, if we use a random, it'll sort of bounce around a little bit. That's kind of nice. Here's a trick that'll work if you have a Tiga keyboard or a Tiga desktop. Say you have one of your oscillators is on a saw wave here. That's oscillator 1. And you want the other ones to match, but you don't want to click through. What you have to do is just press the seed button for the one you want to change, and then press the one you want to match. So we go seed and seed. Now this one will match that one. So now they're all saw waves. So it's just a short little shortcut to changing. And we can turn off MIDI for oscillator 3 here, and clean that up. And now we can take, say we want to take the output of oscillator 3 and go into the FM of oscillator 1. Can do some interesting FM with that. And of course the FM is normal, so we can have this one being modulated. And create some very interesting things. So now if we turn down the envelope and we're just sort of using the pluck from the dynamics with this sort of out of control sound, get these really nice percussive sounds right away. That have sort of this depth to them that makes it sound like the shell is rattling or the can that you're hitting is rattling. Or plastic tube or something. You can tighten up that response. Get something really nice and percussive out of that. Oh, I like that. I spend a lot of evenings just sort of coming up with sounds like little sounds like this, and I'll just record them into Ableton Live, or I'll record them into my MPC, and I'm just like, at some point I'm going to need that little percussion sound. Like 3 or 4 of these, up a little higher maybe. Nice and short, and you have some really nice hats. We can even go even further. Get some weird radio sounds out of them. Switch to bandpass here. There's not a ton up there, but boy, it's good. That's a nice way to get really nice, dense cymbal sounds. The sounds, if you let it open up, it sort of falls apart. Unless, of course, you're doing some sort of alien movie. All right, so I think I've proven to you that not only can I not play the keyboard at all, but hopefully that I've taught you a little bit about Tiga keyboard and some of the possibilities with it. Because it's an open modular system, you really can integrate whatever expansion modules you would like into the full signal flow, whether it be an oscillator or an effect like a phase shifter, or even, you could put one of those 1010 music samplers in here, and sample your sound and then play it polyphonically. Or you can have, you can put a maths in here and have all of the interesting modulation options that are tied to that module. Or really, the sky's the limit. Whatever you sort of feel like would add something to the music that you're making. That's sort of why it's there. It's designed to expand it to your liking. Tied to the Tiga synth voice, which I think is very flexible and very interesting on its own. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Leave it here for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. There was another one of these at 2 o'clock earlier today if you want to hear me go through the spiel with some different modules and maybe some different sounds. Also, I know Jorb put up a video today. Bo Beats put up a video today. I think there was a couple other ones. That's not my side of the business, so I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention, to be honest. I haven't watched any of those videos. I don't know what. Hopefully they liked them, because I'm gonna feel really dumb if I send you to a video where they didn't like it. But I certainly like it. It is a continuing, as with all of our desktop instruments. It's sort of a continuing work in progress. The firmware will be continued to be updated and enhanced based on user feedback and based on obviously fixing bugs. What we're going to do is we do have a firmware update coming out for Tiga keyboard in the next week or two. That then will trickle down, and we will update Tiga desktop shortly after that with the same functionality, just to make sure they're on par with each other, because some of the features that this has are not in Tiga desktop yet. For instance, the different arpeggiator modes, where you can play the order that the notes are pressed, or you can play it forward, reverse, or random. That's something that Tiga desktop can't do. We will add that to it so that it can. And, we're going to be sort of looking at all of these things and constantly making changes based on feedback. So if you get one of these, or if you have a Tiga desktop already and you have a feature that you're interested in, that's actually doable, because remember, the synth voice is all analog. It fully, resistor capacitor analog, so we can't go in and add another oscillator or anything like that, like they can do on like the Electron analog rhythm. But what we can do is tweak the way we can control that analog and play around with the arpeggiator and things like that. And we're absolutely up for feedback on that stuff, because we want to make these instruments as user-friendly and as flexible for the artists using them as we can. So please, if you do have feedback related to your Tiga desktop or your Tiga keyboard, once you would get one, let us know what you think, and certainly we will do our best to add that. Alani says, "It's a truly beautiful instrument. Congratulations all." Thank you, Alani. You are always saying nice things, and I definitely appreciate it. And again, thank you everyone for hanging out with me. I have a couple Tiga keyboard related videos that haven't been publicly released on YouTube yet, but if you go to the Pittsburgh Modular Tiga page and you want to watch them sort of in advance, they are embedded into the Tiga webpage, so you can see them there. There's one, I called it Tiga Keyboard Alaska. It's a Tiga keyboard with a mountain behind it, and then something may or may not happen. But those are all multi-tracked demo recordings that I made, and they sort of show the flexibility. They sound very different from the demo that Bus Crates made on the intro video. So it will give you an idea of some of the distinct sounds you can make. All the sounds on those videos were made using Tiga keyboard, except for the drum sounds. We were using a different drum machine for that. But for everything else, it is Tiga keyboard. So check those out, and And really, if you're curious, you want a lot of sounds, watch the Taiga videos, because the Taiga desktop videos, because again, it's the same synth voice. So you really can make the exact same sounds if that's what you're looking for. The only difference would be in this one, you have a little bit more modulation to maybe create a little bit more complex sounds with it. But other than that, the voicing should be identical. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and I'm going to shut all this down and probably take a nap. But I really appreciate everybody hanging out with me all day today. Excuse me. And for keeping up with what we do. Again, if you have any questions, just reach out to us. We are nice people and happy to answer your questions. Bye, everyone.